Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 1 of our 6-part Eternal Masters set review. So today we're going to look at all of the white cards in the set. We're also going to look at the Azorius cards as well as the Orzhov cards, and we have one lone Esper card we're going to take a look at as well. Now, after today, we'll be back again tomorrow with all the blue cards and some more of the multicolor, and we're going to go through the week, and by the end of the 6 episodes, we'll cover the whole set. So a couple things. First off, the big thing to remember about this set review is these are all reprints. So there is no kind of guessing what card's good, what card's not good. We know all these cards are good. These are actually some of the best cards ever printed. So there's not really much to talk about there. So I'm really going to focus on the limited game more than anything. So keep that in mind as we go. I mean, I'm sure at some moments I will diverge a little bit and talk about a card in a constructed format. But for the most part, I'm going to try to stick to the limited game and hopefully prepare you for playing some drafts and some sealed with this set because it looks incredible. Now, the second thing before we get started I wanted to mention was just wanted to briefly go over some of the archetypes you could look for if you're drafting or building a sealed deck with the white cards. Now, here's what I've been really impressed with. I've only had a few hours to sit down and digest what was in the set. I read through all the cards and really tried to process everything. And here's what has really impressed me. A lot of times when you have a set, what happens is if you're drafting one color, there's probably maybe 2 or 3 archetypes that you could lean towards. This time, if you're into a certain color pretty heavily, you actually could draft any of the other colors and have a viable draft archetype. So for white, for example, some of the archetypes you could be looking for would be white-red, which is a tokens kind of go wide style deck. There's white-green, which is an enchantment style deck. There's a blue-white flyers deck. There's a white-black blink/recursion style deck, which a lot of people refer to as aristocrat style. So all of those are built in here as viable options. And there's also some really good mana fixing at the common level, so you can even splash a third color, maybe go for 3 colors or even 4 or 5 colors. The world's kind of open to you in this draft format, so keep that in mind. This is going to be incredible. So as we go through each card, I'm going to try to talk briefly about the card and try to point out where its strengths are for each of those 4 formats. Basically, all the cards are good. There's no card in here that I'm going to say is bad, don't play it. So really, a card might be better in a certain archetype than another archetype, and that's what we're going to try to zero in on. All right, so let's get started. First off, we have Aven Rift Watcher. So this card is a 2/3 flyer for 3. Now it has Vanishing 3, so it's only going to last a couple turns. You gain a little life off of it. It's fine. It could be fine in the blue-white flyers deck, but really this is going to excel more in the black-white deck, which is more the aristocrat style deck. You can put this out, get a little bit of value from it, and then maybe blink it, get some more value from it, reset the Vanishing, get 2 more life, or maybe it does go to the graveyard but you're able to get it back to your hand, you cast it again, you just do it again. So this is a card I definitely want to play in that deck. Might not always make my cut in some of the other archetypes, but I think it would be very good there. Next we have a little card called Balance, and this is the first mythic of the day. First thing first, this card is crazy broken. There's a reason this is banned in Legacy and is restricted in Vintage. This is crazy. So the thing with Balance is, if you have this card in your hand, your opponent doesn't know you have it, and they can't really afford to play around Balance. I mean, it's a mythic. What are the odds that you actually have it, right? So they maybe overcommit to the board, you undercommit, and simply for 2 mana, you could put yourself in a position where you're winning the game. It's that good. It's that awesome. And the thing is, it's good in all archetypes. It may shine even more in the aristocrat style because of the card discarding. You may be able to get something back out of the graveyard at some point. However, it's going to be good. If you get Balance and you have any way to get white mana in your deck, go ahead and include it. You'll thank me later. Next we have Ballynock Cohort, and this is a nice little beater. I like this card. I mean, for 3 you get a 2/2 first striker. I'm happy with that, and if it's a 3/3 first striker, I'm even more happy. This is a good card. It's probably going to shine most in the Boros kind of go wide, a lot of small beaters deck, but it's going to be good. This is another one that you could play really in any archetype and you'll be pretty happy with it. Benevolent Bodyguard. So here's the thing you'll notice in white as we go forward. There's a lot of these target creature you control gains protection from color of your choice till end of turn cards. They're all going to be very good for you. They're great combat tricks in a lot of cases. Now this one isn't so much a combat trick because it kind of sits out on the board. Now here's the good news though. Look at the Aristocrat style deck in black and white. You'll be able to play this maybe turn 1 or turn 2. Use it, get some value out of it, goes to the graveyard. You have a lot of ways to bring cards back from your graveyard to your hand. You get to do it all over again just for 1 mana to recast. That could be good in that archetype. I don't know if I'm playing this in a lot of the other archetypes. Maybe I might throw a one of in a deck, but I would be happy to play even a few of these perhaps in the Aristocrat style deck. Kelsiderm. This is a fantastic beater. This card was from Planar Chaos, and it was kind of a plane shifted version of Blastoderm, which is a green version of the same card. Both very, very good. I will point out, though, it does have Shroud and not Hexproof. So if you're not used to playing with Shroud, keep in mind that means you can't target it either. So you can't put any sort of enchantments on it or anything like that. So that could get a little awkward. But remember that and you'll be fine. You get a 5/5 for 4. Now granted, after a few turns it goes away, but again, if you're able to recur that back from the graveyard afterwards, it could be very good. So this is going to shine a little more again in the Aristocrat style deck, but it's still a good kind of beat down 4-drop creature in a lot of the archetypes. Coalition Honor Guard. Don't underestimate this card. The flag bearers could be super annoying for your opponents sometimes. They just sometimes have to figure out how to get rid of this flag bearer before they can really continue with their strategy. This is a great sideboard card against the enchantment decks that are going to be playing a lot of auras. This is a good sideboard card against the kind of spell flashback Izzet deck that's trying to like burn you out and blow up your creatures. This is awesome. So it won't live forever, obviously. It's going to have a target on its back, but it will slow down your opponent enough that you might be able to get some tempo out of it. It might not always make your first cut, but it's always in the sideboard. Don't forget it's there. You'll be very happy to board it in against a lot of matchups. 8.5 tails. Here's another just real cheap creature. I mean, you get a 2/2 for 2 white. Granted, it's 2 on color, but still has an amazing ability. The fact that it can start giving permanents you control protection from white until end of turn, and then you can also start making other things white to basically protect them from it. Now, it's a little more mana intensive, but it can be worth it. Again, this is probably best in the Aristocrat style deck because it's another cheap card that can be reoccurred, but at the same time, this is pretty good probably in most cases. Elite Vanguard. So this is a pretty good beater. Now, Savannah Lions back in the day were a 2/1 creature for 1, basically the same thing, but it was a lion instead of a human soldier, and it was actually very, very powerful in the early days of Magic. Now, time goes on, and this card isn't as strong as Savannah Lions used to be, but it's still a good limited card, especially in sealed. So if you're in that Boros build and you're looking to go wide with a lot of cheap creatures and give yourself some token advantage and then pump everything, yeah, Elite Vanguard will do a lot of good work for you. Might not make all your cuts if you're playing some other slower archetypes where you're trying to go bigger, but definitely will be good in the Boros deck. Enlightened Tutor. Now, this is another one of the most powerful cards probably ever printed, and just the fact that you can tutor for any artifact or enchantment and basically put it on top of your library, amazing. Now, you do have to have targets for it, so if you don't have good or enough targets for this card, then maybe it sits out, unfortunately, but let's be honest, you can probably find something to target with this in any deck. There's Juggernauts in this set, for example, that are printed. Very good beater, artifact creature. A lot of stuff you can target. A lot of enchantments, good enchantments too, in this set. So aside from that, obviously this is going to especially shine in the green-white enchantment deck, but don't feel like you have to be in that archetype to get value out of this. Next we have Fate's Fetters, and this is very similar to Pacifism. Costs a little more, you get a little bit of life out of it, but again, this is an enchantment, so keep that in mind for the green-white enchantment deck. Enchantments will matter. A lot of times you'll get some good card draws off them, stuff like that. But even if you're not in that deck, this is still very good removal for white. Now, as we go forward, you're going to see white maybe has the best removal out of the set. There's some really amazing white removal cards we're going to be looking at. This is an awesome one. I almost cringe to say that this might not even always make your cut because you might get some other better ones because this is one of the best ones probably ever printed, but there's so many good ones. Now, Having said that, yes, it's going to be great in the enchantment deck, and it's just going to be great overall. Don't be afraid to play it, but check out your pool. You may have some even better ones that we'll be seeing in just a few moments. Field of Souls. Now, here's a card that just shows how elegant the design of this deck is. This is a very impressive card. Basically, if I'm in the Boros deck and I want to go wide and I want to have tokens, this could do very well in that deck. If I'm in the green-white enchantment deck and I want more enchantments, this will be great there. Maybe I can draw some cards when I play it. If I'm in the flyer deck and I know some of my creatures will die and I want to replace them with more flyers, this works there as well. If I'm in the aristocrats deck and I know things are going to be dying in that Orzhov style deck, well, this is pretty good there too. This fits into all 4 of those archetypes, and that's awesome. Now, it is a double white card. It doesn't mean you're always going to play it, especially if you're going deep, maybe going to a 3rd color. You might want to avoid this, but there's a lot of good reasons to play it in a lot of archetypes, and that's pretty cool. Glimmerpoint Stag. This is a 3/3 vigilance for 4. That alone makes it pretty good, but the fact that when it enters the battlefield it can blink something is actually kind of awesome too. There's a lot of good enter the battlefield effects. Obviously this is going to be even better probably in the aristocrats Orzhov deck, but it's going to be good for you. If you have some enter the battlefield targets, you're still going to want to play this no matter what deck you're in. And it also works very well in the Boros deck. You're going to notice in a few days when we look closer at red, there's a lot of good red enters battlefield effects, some good direct damage effects and stuff off some of those creatures, so it will excel there too. But this is a very good card. Even if you're just getting a 3/3 vigilance for 4, it can still be real good. Next we have Honden of Cleansing Fire. Okay, so this is a legendary enchantment shrine, and there's one in each color, and they're all uncommon. And of course, they all do different things based on how many shrines you control. So if you happen to get all 5 out, you get plenty of value each turn. Now, I think there is probably a pretty good draft strategy here. If you just try to pick up the shrines, pick up some other like good stuff in all 5 colors, and then get the dual lands that are available at common that come into play tapped, you probably have a decent deck on your hands. Now, if someone else is trying to do the same thing, you're probably going to have a bad time. But if you're the only one at the table doing it, I feel like there might be a good deck there. So it's hard to say without actually sitting down and drafting the set yet, but I feel like it could be decent. So I want to try it out and I guess see how it goes, but I think there could be a powerful deck there. Humble. Now, this is one of the most powerful combat tricks I think probably ever devised. So this card's awesome. You can play this in any archetype and you'll be very, very happy to do so. Not a whole lot more I can say about it. It's just very powerful. Intangible Virtue. So this is a little niche because there's not a super high amount of token generation in this set, but there's a little bit. It falls in the Boros colors, white and red. So if you're in that deck and you have a fair amount of token generation, then yeah, this is going to be okay for you. So now if you're not and you don't have targets for this, well, then it's going to sit in your sideboard. But keep an eye out for it because there are times where this card can be good. It just might not be all the time, but when it's good, it's going to be real good. Jareth Leonine Titan. So you could look at this card a few ways. First off, this could be a great reanimation target. There's some better ones out there, and we'll see one later as we go, but this isn't a horrible one. It's very defensive. It's a great blocker. You can give it protection from colors to get in for some damage and protect itself. So there's a lot that it can do. It's hard to deal with. I do like that about this card. It costs 6, and it's pretty good for a 6-drop, but it's 3 white. So if you're in a 3rd color, even splashing a 3rd color and you don't have a lot of dual land support, you might not always want to include this in your deck. If you're afraid you're not going to be able to cast it, you probably want to just pick something else. But if you're in maybe a dual color deck and you think you're pretty confident you'll have 3 white available to you, yeah, this is going to be just fine, I think. So it's a great creature. It's going to be something your opponent's going to have to find an answer for, and it's going to be really hard to deal with. Just keep in mind that it might not be the easiest thing to cast. And make sure your deck is equipped to deal with that. Karmic Guide. So here's a nice little reanimation spell, actually one of the better reanimation spells that are in the set, and it's in white, so obviously this kind of wants to be in the Orzhov deck where reanimation can really shine. But you know what? Even if you're not in those colors, you have some good creatures that might end up in the graveyard, well, by all means, go ahead and play this. Even if it's just like a Sarah Angel that you're reanimating, that's probably good enough. This card's actually kind of awesome. It's a good sideboard card too if you're playing against a black deck and you just need a flyer with protection from black to get in for some damage. This is also good if you're in the Azorius colors and you're in that flyer deck, because there's also a lot of kind of mill that really is meant for the Simic deck, but you can kind of mill yourself into something maybe. So this has a lot of versatility too, and it's another good example of just elegant design. This fits into so many of the archetypes. It's just really awesome. Core Hookmaster. So nowadays blue has this ability, but back in the old days white had it. This is another really good card. You'll be very happy to play this. It's a huge tempo play, gives you a nice 2/2 body on top of it, and this probably shines more in the red-white deck than anything where you're trying to be ultra aggressive, or maybe even the blue-white deck where you're being more aggressive with flyers, but regardless, it's going to be good probably in any deck. Mesa Enchantress. So this looks obviously tailor-made for the green-white deck, the Enchantment Matters deck. This is uncommon. You're going to get plenty of value off your enchantments when you can get one or even two of these in play. But even if you're not in that deck, if you have enough targets, this can still be fine to run. I mean, it doesn't feel good to get an 0/2 for 3, especially 2 on color. But at the same time, if you know you're going to draw even a couple cards off it over the course of the game, could be good enough. So don't forget that it's there. It can be a very good card in the right circumstances. Mistral Charger. So this is a little flyer, 2/1 beater. It's going to be great for you in the red-white kind of go wide deck, and it's also going to be good for you in the Azorius flyer deck. But you know, sometimes it will fit into some of the other decks as well. If you need a good 2-drop, this isn't a bad one. Monk Idealist. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're getting a 2/2 for 3 in this set, I don't think, unless you know you're going to get value from the ability. So if your opponent's playing a lot of good enchantments, or even a few enchantments that you just don't have an answer for, yeah, then you're probably going to sideboard this in. But if you're not up against an enchantment strategy, then you probably want to leave this one out. Mother of Ruins. Okay, so another one of the most powerful cards probably ever printed. Sees tons of legacy play, obviously, and has for a long time. Now, if you never played with this card, either in Legacy or in a cube or something, you'll almost be floored at how good this is. It's just at instant speed. You can just tap this thing, protect a creature, give something protection to get in for some damage, give something protection to deal with a large creature that's coming back at you. Now your opponent just simply has to play around this all the time, and it becomes this mini game of them basically trying to find a way to get rid of it. And eventually they might be able to, but they're going to lose time and they're going to lose card advantage most likely to do it. It's just an awesome attrition card. So yeah, this card might shine the most in the Orzhov deck because of the recursion of a cheap creature, so on and so forth. But this is awesome in every deck. If I'm in white, I'm probably 100% playing this card. Pacifism, one of the best white removal cards of all time, originally printed in Mirage, been reprinted a million times, always amazing and limited. This thing's at the common level. There's going to be a lot of them going around. Could still be a very, very high draft pick, though. The card's just amazing. Next we have Raise the Alarm, and this is a nice little common token generator. So if you're going wide with the Boros deck, this card's going to be fantastic for you, especially if you have Intangible Virtue to pump these things. You'll be very, very happy. You know, it's not going to fit into every deck, obviously, but it does feel really good in that archetype. Rally the Peasants. Now you can tell by the flashback cost here, this card is kind of nudging you, giving you the elbow, saying, hey, put me in the Boros deck, and it's going to be very, very good in the Boros deck. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be good in, say, the Azorius Flyers deck. It could be excellent there as well. Could even be good in the Aristocrats deck, where you may have a lot of little creatures or cheap creatures running around there too at times. So yeah, this is going to fit into a lot of different places. It's a very good card, and the flashback just puts it over the top. Seal of Cleansing. So a couple uses for this card. One, if I'm in the green-white enchantment deck, hey, this is a real cheap enchantment. Hopefully I'll get some value off of it. But secondly, if my opponent is playing any artifacts or enchantments and I need an answer for them, this card's actually pretty awesome. So yeah, I might sideboard it in a lot of instances, but it's a very good sideboard card to deal with those threats. Second thoughts. Now, we've seen some amazing white removal spells, and we're going to see some more. It's not over yet. This one is not a bad one, but it just feels bad compared to all the other ones we saw. Now, it is common, so it's going to be sort of easy to find and pick up if you need it, and it's going to be there for you. And the fact that it cantrips is kind of nice considering you're paying 5 for it, but you do have to wait for the creature to attack. Now, it does exile the creature, which might be good in a reanimation strategy. So if you're playing against reanimation, you might want to sideboard that in that way if they reanimate some huge target, you're able to use this. You don't have to worry about it coming back again. So it does have its purpose in the set, but it might not always make your cut just simply because there's so much fantastic removal in white. Sarah Angel. So one of the original cards. Sarah Angel, you know what? It's easy to forget how good this card is, because you see this card, and over the years we've seen more powerful cards. I mean, like, look at Archangel Avacyn, for example. But the thing is, even though Sarah Angel probably wouldn't make the cut in standard nowadays, or definitely doesn't see modern play or anything like that, but you sit down at a game of limited, this card is a beater. So obviously it's going to really shine in the Azorius Flyers deck. However, it doesn't just need to be there. I would probably play this pretty confidently in almost any deck. I mean, just the fact that you have a 4/4 flyer, it's got evasion, and the vigilance also allows you to block with it. This card's incredible and limited. You don't necessarily want 3 or 4 in your deck just because of the casting cost, but you'll be happy in most cases, I think, with 1 or 2. Shelter, another extremely powerful combat trick. This, for 2 mana, wow, it saves a creature, it lets you get some more damage across, it protects you, and then you cantrip off of it? Yeah, sign me up. I'm very happy to have multiple copies of Shelter in my deck. This card's amazing. Soul Catcher. Now, this card's good in the right deck. It probably shines the most in the blue-white Flyers deck, where you're going to have some of your Flyers dying. You might get some value off of it. It could be okay in some builds of the Boros deck, because you're going wide with a lot of creatures. Sometimes you do have some small Flyers there and some tokens. So it's probably okay most of the time in that deck, but other archetypes, you may want to skip it. If you're not going to get value off it from Flyers dying, it's not going to be great. Now, this is also one of the cards whenever a creature with flying dies, so it doesn't just have to be your creatures, so maybe you sideboard this in if your opponent has a lot of Flyers. Squadron Hawk, speaking of way to get a lot of Flyers, this is perfect for that. And this is a card that works really well in a number of the archetypes. Again, this is going to be good for you in the black-white deck. It's going to be good for you in the white-blue deck. It's going to be good for you in the red-white deck. Here's the thing, though, with this card. It might not be as good in sealed. Like, if you only have 1 or 2 copies of this, it's probably nothing fantastic. But in draft, if you have 4 or 5 copies, it's amazing. So this is a very good card. Now, we don't have Stoneforge Mystic in this set or any crazy broken equipment like Batterskull, so it's not going to completely take over the game or anything, but it's a very, very good card. Swords to Plowshares, maybe the best white removal of all time. You could probably make an argument between this or Path to Exile. This card's amazing. Don't worry about the life gain. Use it when you need it. It exiles the creature. It only costs 1. It's at instant speed. And this thing's that uncommon. So this is a classic card. If you did play Conspiracy Draft, though, it was in Conspiracy. You may have had some experience with it there. But this card is just incredible. Put it in. Play it no matter what. Next we have Unexpectedly Absent, and I played this a lot in Cube. This is from a Commander supplemental product, and at first I was kind of like, oh, the card seems good, but then the more I played with it, I realized that this card is one of the higher tier cards. Just the fact that you can deal with a non-land permanent is pretty huge. So this is a huge tempo play, but it helps you deal with things like planeswalkers or enchantments or artifacts or whatever you need to deal with, or just simply creatures. Also, it's very versatile. If I need to protect something on my own and put it back on top of the library, I can do that. So maybe I'm going to play a board sweep and I want to protect something, or maybe my opponent's going to target a major card that I have, like a planeswalker or something. I'm able to put it back on top. It's nice for resetting cards. So if I have something like Vanishing Counters, or I have a planeswalker that's low on loyalty or something like that, I can reset it by putting it on top of my library and replaying it next turn. So it's also an instant on top of everything else. This card is excellent. I wouldn't hesitate to pick this actually very high in a draft. I could see myself picking this sometimes a second or even third pick. It's just amazing. Wall of Omens, very good enter the battlefield effects, so notate that for some of the blink effects that we see, especially in white and in black. But even if I'm not in the Orzhov style deck, this is still real good. I mean, giving yourself a 0/4 blocker for 2 and then cantripping, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. If I can blink it, I'm very, very happy, but even if I can't, this is still really, really good. War Priest of Thune. So this one is fine. You get a bear with upside, so that's definitely good. But if your opponent doesn't have an enchantment to destroy, it becomes a little more lackluster, especially in this set. So it's still good. If you're looking for a 2-drop, it's going to be just fine for your curve. But if you don't need another 2-drop, maybe just sideboard it in to deal with a problematic enchantment. Welkin Guide. Now this kind of feels like it would be good in maybe the Boros deck because you're going wide, you're going to have a lot of creatures. Now the only thing that makes me, I don't know, a little low on this card is just the fact that it doesn't have flash. If it had flash, it would be a lot better, and it costs 5. At the end of the day, you're getting a 2/2 flyer, you're just getting the boost and flying just one time. So if you have a large ground pounder or maybe a bunch of large ground pounders in your deck that you feel like you could benefit from an effect like this, that's probably why you're going to play it. But if you don't have that in your deck, I could see skipping this card. I mean, it's going to be fine in like the Azorius Flyers deck if you need another flyer, but I mean, think about it. You're spending the same for this as you are Sarah Angel. That doesn't feel as great, but it's okay if you're trying to get like some 5/5 ground pounder in the air. White Mane Lion. This is another one of my favorite cards from the past. You get another bear with upside. It's a 2/2, but it has flash, and you return a creature you control to your hand when it comes into play. So what's interesting is there's times where you want to play the 2-drop, but it's awkward because you don't really want to return a creature, or maybe you can't return a creature to your hand. You don't have one. So that can be a little strange. However, that's not really what you want this card to do. You want this card to return like your Wall of Omens to your hand so you can play it again and draw another card. You want it to protect a creature that's maybe going to get Chain Lightninged or something like that. That's really where this card shines. And granted, this is probably best in the Orzhov deck. However, I think it's going to be good in a lot of builds. Wrath of God, another one of the classic cards from the beginning of Magic, and many of the same reasons that balance is so great and limited. Wrath of God's kind of doing the same thing for 2 more mana. It's going to destroy all creatures, so basically you kind of sit back, you undercommit, allow your opponent to overcommit, play it at the right time, and sweep the board. If you're behind, you top deck this thing, it resets the board for you. It's incredible. Now, if you're ahead, yeah, it might be a dead card, but that's okay because you're ahead, right? And if anything goes wrong and you fall behind, you have this to fall back on. So this is going to be awesome for you in Limited. Doesn't matter what archetype you're in, as long as you're able to cast it, you'll be happy. All right, now we move on to the Azorius cards. There's just a couple of them. The first is Brago, King Eternal. Now, if you never had a chance to play with Brago before, if you didn't play, say, Conspiracy Draft, or maybe pick them up for a cube or commander, try this card out. This card is another one that is mind-blowingly good. So even if you just cast this card as a 2/4 flyer for 4, and Brago attacks in, even if you have nothing else on the board and he kind of just flickers himself and untaps himself, that's actually pretty good. But just the fact that you can, say, put this in the Azorius Flyers deck, attack in with this and a bunch of flyers, and then kind of blink everything so you have blockers for the next turn, that's pretty awesome. Also, he can blink non-land permanents you control, which means you can reset planeswalkers if you have low loyalty planeswalkers. You can reset cards with vanishing counters on them. This card is incredible. Obviously, it's going to fit well into the Flyers deck. It's also going to fit well if maybe you want to splash for blue and put this actually in the Aristocrats deck. It'll be awesome there. But honestly, this is going to be good probably most of the time as long as you have the colors to cast it. Brago is fantastic. Thunderclap Wyvern, really a card that's there for the Flyers deck, right? It's in the Azorius colors, it's pumping the other Flyers. Not to say you can splash blue and say the Boros deck and still get some value out of it, so keep your eyes open for those opportunities. But yeah, this card's going to shine in the Azorius Flyers. All right, let's move on to Orzhov with Vindicate. Again, another super powerful removal spell. Now, here's the thing with Vindicate. Destroy target permanent. not target non-land permanents. So guess what? Not only can you get rid of creatures, but you can get rid of anything that's getting you down. This enchantment giving you trouble, it's gone. Artifact giving you trouble, it's gone. Land giving you trouble, it's gone. Your opponent stumbles, misses a land drop, you vindicate one of their lands or vindicate them off their third color or something. It might be enough to win the game perhaps. Vindicate is incredibly powerful. If you are lucky enough to get this in a draft or in sealed, you'll be very happy if you can play it. Zealous Persecution, another really good Orzhov card. Obviously fits well in that aristocrat style deck, but also you could splash colors to play this. The Boros deck is another, I think, good candidate where this could be strong, so maybe you're just splashing black in that deck to get this card in there, but this is another very powerful card. Now to our last card of the day. It's a mythic. It's the lone Esper card, and it is Sphinx of the Steel Wind. Now, let's be honest, this is here because it's a reanimation target. So, not to say you can hard cast this if a game went really long, but I just think this set is extremely powerful, and having an 8-drop with 3 different colors and the casting cost, I don't think is really where you want to be unless you're really got some serious ramp or something behind you. But for the most part, yeah, you could possibly wrap into this, but for what you're really trying to do is bring it out of the graveyard with reanimation, and for that it will be a very, very good target. Now, it is a mythic, you're not going to see this all the time in limited or anything, but when it does show up, if you happen to have cards to support reanimation, this will be a great target for you, and that's pretty much it. So, having said that, those are the cards for today. So we looked at all the white cards, some of the multicolor cards. We're going to be back tomorrow with the blue cards and also a few more of the multicolor. And over the course of the next 5 days, we'll work our way all the way through the set. So as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.